بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين.
يا أقصى صبرا يا أقصى صبرا يا أقصى لن ننساك.
ميعاد العزة ميعاد العزة ميعاد العزة في مسرى.
صبرا يا أقصى صبرا يا أقصى صبرا يا أقصى لن ننساك.
ميعاد العزة ميعاد العزة ميعاد العزة في مسرى.
سندك عروشا
سندك عروشا
سندك عروشا للطغيان
وسنمضي أسودا
وسنمضي أسودا
وسنمضي أسودا للميدان.
The hadith of the victorious group. Now, the victorious group is known in Arabic as al-Taifa Al-Mansura, and in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ gives us good news, where he tells us that there will always remain of his ummah a single group which will be victorious upon the truth. And that's to sum up all these hadith. And this hadith is a hadith which is known as a mutawatir hadith, which means that it's been reported by so many companions that you don't need to investigate its chain of narrations. Okay, the hadith generally come to us in two modes. There are hadith which are mutawatir, which means they're reported by so many numbers, and there's no need to even investigate their chains of narrations because so many numbers report the hadith. It by necessity it could not be a lie, okay, or an error in transmission. Other hadith are ahad hadith, which are non-mutawatir hadith. And here we look at the different chains of narration to see if the Prophet ﷺ actually, spoke those words or did that action. So, this hadith about al-Taifa Al-Mansura is something which is a mutawatir hadith, and it's been a hadith which has been claimed mutawatir by many scholars, among them Ibn Taymiyyah, among them As-Suyuti. And what we're going to discuss is we're going to talk about the qualities, who are they, what time and place do they exist, and we're going to just talk about the issue of their strangeness. In terms of the qualities, if we look at the hadith, the various wordings of the hadith, we find that they have 5 different qualities, this group. And let's sort of go through them. The first quality is that it says that they are, one of the narrations of the hadith says that they are upon the truth, ala al-haq. Okay? And the word ala in the Arabic language, which we can translate upon, the word upon, has a number of senses to its meaning. One of it is that when you say something is ala something, it gives a sense that it's settled. In other words, it's not something which is like just sliding upon something, but rather it's firm and rooted upon something. So they're firmly and settled and rooted upon the truth. Alright? And this is a necessity because there's the great circle of Islam, right? And then there's the circle of the saved group within that, right? The circle within that is of this group, Al-Taifa Al-Mansura, the victorious party. They're a part of this saved group. So this is the saved, sect, and this is the Muslims as a whole. There's 72 groups, right? And then over here you have this group, the victorious group. So, as a result, since they're part of the saved group, they're part of al-Firqat al-Najiyah, they have to be upon the truth, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't give them victory, necessarily, unless they were upon the truth. And so, therefore, you find that they're upon the truth in all what that word means. In terms of their beliefs, they're upon the truth. In terms of their character, their conduct. In terms of their jihad. In terms of their taking the different means to bring victory to the religion. They're upon the truth, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us that we must muster what we can of strength. And so mustering what we can of strength means that you have to take the different means which Allah has disposed of you, okay? So they're upon the truth in that they fully utilize the means which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. So that means they become knowledgeable of different trades and different planning and management and so forth. The second quality of the saved group is that they are, one of the hadith says that it is qa'ima, that they are qa'ima bi amrillah, that they have established, or they have erected the command of Allah. And so therefore that implies that for them to have, stood up with Allah's command, applied it, erected it, it means that they have, carried the message. That there are people who are active in da'wah, active in spreading the sunnah, active in commanding good and forbidding evil. And these are very important matters. In fact, if you consider it, there are many passages in the Quran, like in Surah At-Tawbah, ayah 116, Surah 9, 116, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that, had it not been, had only it been in the previous nations, right, a group of people who would prevent corruption, Allah wouldn't have destroyed them, you see. So, one of the ways that Allah doesn't destroy a people is because there are amongst those people who command good and forbid evil. When a group of society or community stops having amongst them people who actually publicly command good and forbid evil, then Allah destroys that society. I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might not destroy a society even if it's corrupt, because amongst that society are people who are publicly telling people to command good and forbid evil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see humanity, turn back, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His gentleness, wants people to repent, so He gives them opportunity. So as long as there are people commanding good and forbidding evil, the punishment is not given to them. But once that disappears, that quality from them, Allah destroys those people. And so, therefore, the fact that Prophet ﷺ said that there will always remain one group of his ummah upon the truth, victorious, it shows, as Abu Hurairah said and other companions, that means there will always remain upon the earth Muslims. And since there will always remain upon the earth Muslims, it means that there will always remain people commanding good and forbidding evil. And so, therefore, this is an indication to that. Likewise, the third quality that they have, part of them, as part of the second quality of them establishing the command of Allah, is that they engage in jihad. And this is quite obvious, that they engage in jihad, and their jihad is such that it's not just a jihad of the word of mouth through da'wah, but it's also jihad of weaponry and so forth. And likewise, when it comes to jihad, I mean, since they're the victorious group, and that's part of their qualities, I mean, we should understand jihad here in the most general sense. I mean, in the time when the Muslims have a stake and it's obedient to Allah and it's strong, and so therefore their jihad is with the Muslims, right, under the Khalifa of the Muslims to help spread Islam, right? But during the time when the Muslims do not have that stake, like now, then so what is their jihad? Well, their jihad then becomes to prepare the Muslims, right, to take that responsibility, and also their jihad becomes one of to defend the Muslims to the best of their abilities. The third characteristics of this group, At-Taifa Al-Mansura, is that they revive the religion, as promised by the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith that at the beginning of each century, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send those who revive this religion. And the word men in the Arabic language in this hadith of Abu Dawood is applicable both to an individual and it's applicable to a group of people. And so therefore, we should understand it in that general sense. In fact, this is the opinion of Ibn Hajar and others that, the idea of reviving the religion is not the task of a single individual. When one considers, the state that the Ummah is today, right? Let's take the Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ in the city of London. Could a single man come and revive the Muslims in London by himself? I mean, that would be impossible, right? I mean, to rectify all the affairs of the Muslims in a single person. I mean, obviously we need, great efforts just for this. So what about the whole Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ from the far reaches of China to the depths of Africa, to the Europe, and so forth. I mean, how could one person revive the Ummah? Obviously, it would need a group of people. So the strongest opinion is that the people who revive the religion is actually a party of people. It doesn't mean they have to be all together. They could be in different parts of the world. They could be engaged in different activities. But the point is that it's a group activity. The fourth characteristic of the victorious group, is that the hadith refer to them as zahirin, that they're apparent. And this being apparent refers to two things. One of it means that they're not hidden. Okay, in order for them to give victory to the religion, for them to be victorious, they have to be out in the open. I mean, they can't be a group of people who are hidden and are not showing themselves, but rather they're publicly known, they're seen, and so forth. And likewise, the implication is that the word also applies that they're persistent. They're constant upon the truth. And for this reason, they are victorious. So they're not like a group of people who are, in some sort of, some sort of apartment hiding and so forth, and they're the victorious group and nobody knows about them and so forth. But rather, they're people who are apparent, who are known, commanding good, forbidding evil, waging jihad, spreading the sunnah, calling unto Allah Azza wa Jal, and so forth. This is their quality. Although at times, a Muslim can hide his religion. At times, he might, because of certain circumstances, he might have to not, engage in society. So, this is some of their characteristics. Now, when we look at these hadith, we find that the hadith identify, regarding this victorious group, some of the hadith point to them appearing at a certain time. And some of them point to them appearing in a certain place. And we need to sort of understand that. Some of the hadith, we'll take the place first. Some of the hadith refer to them appearing in a sham. Some of the hadith say, there will always remain a group of my ummah victorious upon the truth, and they are in a sham. And a sham means that area which we call today Syria and Jordan and Lebanon and Palestine. And some of the hadith, also tells us that they will be fighting at the doors of Damascus, or that they're around Jerusalem and so forth. Okay. So how do we understand this hadith? Does that mean that they're only in this area? The scholars have said that this hadith refers to them at the end of time. And and also you find some of the hadith refer to this group being with Isa ibn Maryam, okay, and some of the hadith refer to them fighting at Dajjal. So what it shows is that at the end of time, the ummah will be gathered in this area of Asham, all right, and so therefore, and this will really when the victorious group will really have its come out fully, because this will be the great battles of humanity that will occur. The battles of the Muslims against the Christians, which they first refer to as Armageddon, the battles between the Muslims and the Jews who will be following their king, at Dajjal, the Antichrist, and so forth. These are the great battles of humanity which will occur at that time. So those hadith which refer to them being in a sham or refer to them being at the end of time does not restrict them to being throughout all times and in different regions, but rather is referring to a specific incident. Because most of the hadith concerning this group does not mention them being in a specific time or place. But most of the hadith are general in its nature. And so therefore, we should understand it in that sense and not restrict it to them. Likewise, concerning this hadith in this group, we find that it's important that we try to identify, again we come to the issue as to who they are. We find again a number of scholars of the Salaf, and I think I listed about 3 or 4, refer to them as being Ahlul Hadith, okay, this victorious party. And Nawawi has a very nice statement. He says that, that this group, you could find them amongst, the valiant, people on the battlefield. And you would find this group among the scholars. And you find among this group among people commanding good and forbidding evil. And you'll find this group among, every single section of this ummah, you will find, members of this party doing some sort of activity to strengthen and to give victory to Islam. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are, just a single group and they're only engaged in jihad or they're in a single time and place, but rather should give it in the most broadest sense. Again, you find, when we talk about the strangeness of this group, again you find that they're even more, they suffer from a strangeness which is more than the saved group, right? The saved sect, right? Because they have taken on, these characteristics. So they're strangers among strangers. A person who is from, in this circle, among the saved sect, he's a person who has done what? He has conformed his life to the teachings of Islam, okay? A person who moves into this circle has not only conformed his life to the teachings of Islam, but now has taken on the added responsibilities, right, of spreading the message of Islam to the rest of the world, and also by bringing as many Muslims as possible into this circle. And so therefore he's, engaged in all these great tasks, so he becomes a stranger among strangers. because his life is just one dedicated to serving Islam and through da'wah, commanding good, forbidding evil, learning and teaching knowledge, waging jihad in the path of Allah, and so forth. So they're strangers among strangers. And this strangeness that they feel, this alienation they feel, depends upon three factors. One of it depends upon their strength. When they're very strong, they don't feel that type of strangeness. Like, in the time of the Sahaba. I mean, the Sahaba, they were not just, the saved group. They were all the Muslims were in this group. There were no other sects, right? And they were all waging jihad and commanding good and forbidding evil and making, preaching to Islam and so forth. So they felt no strangeness in that sense because of their strength. But when this group is weak, like now today, right? Very few people engage in jihad and commanding good and forbidding evil. They really feel, alienated and strange in the world around them. Likewise, it depends upon the strength of their enemies. When their enemies are weak, then they don't feel that type of strangeness. But when their enemies are strong, and their enemies are powerful, and their enemies are, in control of most of the world, then they feel even more, strange. And likewise, part of their strangeness is dependent upon how the general populace of the Muslim, how close they are to the Sunnah. Because when you have the majority of the Muslims, or a large number of Muslims in this circle, then this group then feels that, if this circle over here becomes very big, so that the majority of Muslims, then this group feels they have a base of support around them. But when this circle is very small, then those of that group, which then decide to give da'wah and command good and forbid evil and wage jihad, they feel even, worse off. So depending upon how the general populace of Muslims is close to the Sunnah and is supportive of their efforts, their strangeness, differs and so forth. And so, it becomes very important then for them to, as a group, to try to make sure that as many Muslims as possible that are within this circle. And so, when you come to these hadith, like the hadith of the saved sect, or you come to the hadith of the victorious party, it's not a hadith which should lead a person to be passive, right? I mean, it's hadith which is supposed to encourage action, activity, and to bring people forward. It should spur a person to be constant upon the truth, to be strong, and not to be a person to be weak and timid, and saying, oh well, the Prophet said that everybody's going to go, 73 groups are going to go to, all of them will be just doomed and so forth. So, well, what can I do? And just, retire. But rather, the opposite is supposed to happen. I guess one of the issues which I neglected to mention is, how do we understand this hadith in terms of history? When we come to the history and we look at the history, the Prophet ﷺ said, there will always remain a group of my ummah victorious upon the truth. So what happens if somebody said, well, Muslims today are being defeated everywhere. How could this hadith be true? How can we apply this matter? So how do we, apply this hadith? How do we take the reality of what we're living in and we apply this hadith? So we have to understand that, history, right? It doesn't refer just to like 15 years and so forth. And when you look at the history of the ummah as a whole, it's 1,400 years. And so if you look at the ummah in that sense, it's an ummah of victory. The ummah does not know defeat. Yes, the ummah at times has been defeated, right? But always a defeat would lead to a greater victory. Okay? Let's take some examples. The Crusaders did come, right? And they landed, they took Jerusalem for some 70 years, and they were in the Middle East for 100 years or so. But in the end, they were defeated. Okay? The Mongolians did come and they ravaged the Islamic world. But then from the Mongolians, they became Muslim, and you had the Turks, right, who then spread Islam throughout, Southeast Asia and became people to defend Islam. Even today, in our time, where we find the Muslims, weak and having no state and so forth, we still find victories of Muslims, like the brothers in Afghanistan, who through their efforts, by Allah, blessing their efforts in jihad, the second, world power, right, which some people thought at that time was the most strongest, nation on earth, the Soviet Union, collapsed. One of the major reasons for the collapse of the Soviet Union was the war that they waged in Afghanistan. So, one cannot, look at matters just from a small perspective, and one cannot say, well, yes, Muslims are being defeated in Palestine and in Eritrea and in Kashmir and in the Philippines and the peace process and in the Gulf War and so forth, and so therefore which is defeated. No, but rather you have to look at it from the broadest perspective. Likewise, we should understand that victory over one's enemies is not just victory over one's enemies in the sense of defeating them in the battlefield, right? But victory over one's enemy is of a greater meaning. To be upon the truth, right? I mean, to be bombarded every single day by, the media that we see, right? Telling you to live a lifestyle outside of the Islamic lifestyle, and then for a person or a group of people to be constant upon the truth and to stick to the teaching, this victory. That's a victory, you see, and that is a type of victory. To be able to show the truth of the religion of Islam, and so when a person engages in a debate or a discussion, it becomes apparent to all those who are attending, all those who listen to it, that those arguments that show that Islam is the right religion or that the Sunnah is the correct way are apparent over all other arguments. This is a victory. And likewise, to engage in the battlefield, right, and to rout one's enemies and to take, to seize their property and their land is a victory. So one should look at victory in the most, broadest sense, okay, and not restricted just to one sense. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed this ummah that it's victorious not only in its arguments, but it's victorious also on the battlefield. And so therefore this hadith is a good news, and we should never feel despondent. I mean, even though the affairs of the Muslims now is such that perhaps we've never seen any similar to this in the ummah's history, but it should not lead us to be despondent, right? Or to feel that we have no hope. But rather, we know for a fact that the Prophet ﷺ informed us that until the Day of Judgment, that this ummah will be victorious, and that before this ummah are great battles that it will face. I mean, fighting, the Europeans in the what they call the Armageddon and so forth, or what the Prophet ﷺ referred to as the Malhamatul Kubra, and likewise, which will result in the reconquest of Constantinople and the conquest of Rome. Likewise, fighting and defeating the Dajjal and the Jews. I mean, towards the end of time, these are all great victories that this ummah will face. So one should never feel despondent or have no hope.